We're going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to do our Pledge of Allegiance. You ready?
You're ready.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Go ahead.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you could lead us in prayer tonight. Kiana.
Okay. I'll say a prayer. Everybody bow your heads. In the name of God, the beneficent and merciful God, bless us with a successful meeting, successful quick meeting, and bless us to get home safe in this snow. Amen.
Amen. So the chief is not here. We're supposed to speak on it, but there's one other thing that I did want to cover tonight. We are going to change our ordinance for the garbage for when you set your cans out for the garbage. For when you set your cans out, it's after 7 p.m. We've been getting some complaints from seniors, and that's just too late for them to set it out after 7 because they normally be in the house by 5, some at 4, and their garbage cans are set out earlier, so they've been getting fined. So we definitely would like to change, we are going to change that ordinance. So 24 hours before, you can set out, and then 24 hours after for pickup. Because like I said, my neighbor next door is a senior, and she's normally in the house by 4. So there's no way she can, be at after 7 putting her garbage can out. So we're definitely going to change that because we do have a lot of seniors here in the village, and they are getting fined for that. And it doesn't make that's Mom. It doesn't make sense, to be fined. And we know that they actually go in early. So we're definitely going to change that ordinance for that. Okay. So any discussion for the ordinance to be changed? On for the. I think that's I could have gave it to him. I got this one. Okay.
All right. I think that's good. That's being considerate to the seniors. My question is imposed because you did say that they have been given fines. These people that put theirs out days before and garbage is then flying all over the block and stuff like that. Are y'all enforcing that on a consistent basis of people that's putting out garbage early?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Hey, big fan.
Hey. Yes, we are. That's how this change of ordinance actually came up. We have been strictly enforcing it, and that's where we learned most of us already knew we do have a great amount of seniors that live within the village, but once the enforcement started, that's when we noticed we do have to do some changes. But we are doing when people leave, put their garbage out days before, days after, plus we take into consideration, we contact Homewood Disposal to actually check if someone has a vacation pickup or they're doing a special pickup as well.
I just want to make sure I understand. You said that it will be 4 o'clock p.m. and 24 hours afterwards?
No. I said normally the seniors only put theirs out. Mine's like.
So what is the ordinance going to say in terms?
24 hours before your pickup, and then you got until 24 hours after to make sure it's off the streets, off the curve.
So our pickups, well, for me, my pickups are like 8 o'clock in the morning. So I have 24 hours before, meaning on Wednesday morning, I can put it out 8 a.m. on Wednesday.
Right. And then you got 24 hours after. So if it's Wednesday, then Thursday.
After my pickup.
Right.
So we can have them out as early as 8 a.m. in the morning. Okay.
Because mine is normally Friday morning. So I take it out 7 o'clock Thursday night.
So do we want to do 24 hours or maybe?
Well, we said 24 hours to
4 p.m.
To be considerate. Because a lot of them, like I said, come in, they're in at 4. It gets dark early now.
Well, yeah,
so
what I'm thinking though, do we want garbage cans on the street that early on a Wednesday and maybe have it before dusk?
I still say 24 hours because, again, like I said, we're just trying to make it convenient for the seniors.
I get that, but 8 a.m. on a Wednesday, that'll, for me, perhaps confuse parking on my street because you got all these.
No, I'm saying even if it's 24 hours before, still for me, I probably still would put mine out at the same time. But we're just saying,
too, but
you know, oh, here he is. Wow, okay.
Okay, so what I'm just saying is,
I
okay,
know what you're
today
saying. Yours
is
is
Wednesday, so
you can
if,
put yours out Tuesday.
instead of saying 8 a.m. on a Wednesday for a Thursday pickup, why not say 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. you could start pulling them out instead of having garbage cans lined up
What
all
do you
day?
think, Brian?
The people who put the trash out now that have been getting fined. These are the only people that will be kind of having to deal with this anyway. The normal person, like, I put my trash out the morning of, and because this is ordinance passed, I'm not going to change now and be like, I'm going to put it out 24 hours ahead of time.
I'm not either.
I'm saying the average person is still going to do it the same way. It's just the ones who do, the seniors that do it early, they just won't get fined like they have been as of recent.
I understand that, but as a resident, and I get the senior thing, I do, I'm just saying 8 a.m. on a Wednesday when it's not due to 8 a.m. on a Thursday, that's a long time for a garbage can to sit in front of a house, in my opinion. You have a comment?
Yeah, I do. I just want to intervene because it's still, as they say, under discussion, and they're looking to change the ordinance. They're still trying to solidify a time because some people are saying 24 hours. Some are saying 48. As early as 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. 48 hours later. So it's a matter of when they finally solidify on a time and the amount of hours. The problem is that the ordinance that's in place now says that it's, 7 p.m.? So it's 7 p.m. And the concern is some of the residents, a lot of the residents are seniors, especially once the seasons change, they're not trying to set their garbage can out at night. So
I
the
don't
problem
disagree
is,
with that, though. I
Right.
think what you're not hearing, or I might not be stating correctly, is that 8 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday and have a garbage can on my street all the way to 8 o'clock the next one, we can move the time up, but do we
Hence
have
the
to go
reason.
24 hours ahead?
all right, but hence the reason that we said that they haven't solidified on a time yet. So that's still up for discussion, and then they'll address the concerns. Once they do that, then we'll have mainly like a notification as to when they're going to change it.
But lastly, in consideration of the seniors, I'm certainly not against that, but consider the other residents who may see that as an eyesore on the block. That's all I'm saying.
Right, because that is why the ordinance was originally created. So it is already on the committee of the whole for discussion. So when you come to committee of the whole, please voice your opinion about that, because we will be voting on it in March, the first meeting in March, but it is up for the committee of the whole. But we are getting so many complaints from the seniors because they're telling us that they're usually asleep a lot of times past 7. They don't feel safe coming out. So we're just trying to accommodate them. And I do understand with them leaving it out, but it's kind of confusing, I think, for some of the seniors when you tell them this many hours before and then the difference is changed after. Because I was trying to explain that to a senior a few minutes ago. This is, a written complaint or suggestion about changing the time. So we're trying to accommodate everybody, but that's what committee of the whole is for. So when you come, please voice your opinion.
I think stating an hour would probably be better than just saying 24 hours. So by 3 o'clock, you can start pulling because that's a reasonable time for me. I don't want to see garbage cans up and down the street when I leave out for work and when I come back.
I think 2 or 3 is good. 2 or 3 is a good time, even with even in the winter. About 4 o'clock.
Okay, that was my only comment.
So you can give it.
Good evening. Excuse my tardiness, was taking care of some at the police department. So are there any questions concerning housing and aspect of the police department, of what we can and can't do, or how we assist the housing department?
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess my question would be, and you said this is in reference to the, with the police department. I know that there was an ordinance, and I don't know the ordinance number offhand right now, that enforce, like if the police doesn't come to someone's house a certain amount of times, and I don't want to stereotype people with Section 8, but housing issues, then they have a right to inform the housing department of this and possibly work with the landlord to remove these people. Is that still in effect, or do we even honor that?
That's still in effect, but it's crime-free housing, so it has to be some major. You can have a neighbor that's renting and say they fight all the time. Excuse me, they fight all the time, or they're always throwing parties. That doesn't fall under the police department, but we can, and we do get those complaints, and then I'll talk with Sharon, and then we'll pull up, she'll pull up the history of the homeowner. We can make notification, but as far as the police applying pressure on the realty company or the homeowner, we can't do it. It's like the crime, like if somebody's having a shooting there, or if somebody sees somebody shooting out the house. It's a lot of drug activity, things of that nature. And that's when we have applied the pressure. I've dealt with a couple of homeowners, and they've actually gotten the tenants out. So. Okay,
so my question with that, I mean, because I do understand the level of what is considered crime and not crime, but I'm going to say a known drug house, because that's what it is. I live across the street, so I know what's going on, and I know traffic, and I know that the people are Section 8, and I don't have any discrimination towards them, but when it starts affecting the U.S. Marshals done been there, the police done been there, and you saying, okay, they're not the parties, but the activities and the traffic, and to the point where I don't even want my kids outside. How does that play a part? At some point, I'm supposed to be able to live in my home comfortably without having to worry about if they fighting, shooting, or whatever outside. So, what's that?
Okay, I'm not quite sure, but give me the address and we can pull the history on it.
Okay, because I FOIA'd it, and of course when I FOIA'd it, I got a list of all of, like, the police complaints, and of course when I contacted downtown, because I did my due diligence, and of course they said nobody has ever contacted them from the village of Dolton, and I kind of figured that, but in regards to just my own personal, because it's gotten to a point where I don't want to sit outside, and I shouldn't have to be in my house and don't want to sit outside.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Well, Sharon, to tell you, when I get something, she'll send me an email. I pull it right away. She gave me some last night. I brought her the history on it this morning. And since I've been in place, I've been enforcing it. So I can't speak about past, but give me that address, and then I'll start seeing what to do on it.
All right.
Okay.
Just a question of curiosity. When reporting violations to housing authorities, is that done on a regular basis? Because I know that that's a practice that can happen, that you can report any type of activity or negative activity that causes the police to come out, whether it's fighting, whether it's drug-related or any other criminal activity. If it's a nuisance, then that can be reported, and perhaps that voucher will be pulled, or that particular resident will have to move. Is that something that's still in place? Or are you familiar with it all?
Well, for the most part. So what Chief and I have basically been communicating back and forth is that once we realize that a particular property has been a nuisance, then we reach out to the property manager involved. And at that point, the property manager and the chief start having discussion, because it's a matter of we're getting several complaints about this particular address. How it proceeds after that, sometimes I'm involved, sometimes I'm not. So it's a matter of, if the property manager let us know that they are going to start an eviction process, they in turn let us know that, but that's pretty much how it's been operating right now. I don't know how it's been done in the past, because I've just recently been in this position, but it's a matter of just us constantly trying to work with each other and communicate it back and forth, and involving all parties involved, meaning property manager and or owner of that property. So.
Okay. And I guess I'm just bringing the point up because I know that Housing Authority Cook County has a process, and I think it's 3 offenses, and that's how it proceeds. And I'm just simply asking if that's what we're doing.
So I'm still learning too, so thank you.
So there is a contact I can share with you.
Okay.
If you don't have it, I'll share it with you.
Thank you.
I really have a problem, okay? Now, I don't know what you guys do about the dog situation, I have a neighbor, she's nice, don't get me wrong, but she has 2 big dogs. Last year, got on her, she cleaned it up. But see, it's back to the old ritual. I don't think that I live next door, I can't barbecue because all this dog, and these are big dogs. Big dogs. I don't want to be barbecuing or having family over. It's unfair to me. Now, I don't know what you guys can do. Either she got to clean up every day after her dogs or get rid of them. And I love dogs, don't get me wrong. And I love her dog. But you got to clean up behind them. This is unfair to me. Understand? You wouldn't want to live next door, would you? Would you?
No.
Okay. I don't either. I didn't even barbecue last year because I got to get up. So now it's winter time, so we got all this piled up, and I got to get it up. It's unfair. That's wrong. That's a health issue. My husband's a cancer survivor. I don't need no more problems in my life. So either she got to get rid of them, y'all got to find them. I'm not selling my home. I'm not moving.
We have several village ordinances that we can use for that. After the meeting, once we're off camera, I can get the information from you.
So is there a way we can put something in process that if the person has those 3 complaints, that we could probably, talk to someone at the housing department or get us, a person that we probably can say that someone that we can have like a one-on-one with? Because I know I was told that the person would have to have 3 complaints and then it could be reported to the Department of Housing, because I have the same issue across the street from me where we're having issues with the neighbor, loud parties, fighting, a lot of traffic and things like that. So we definitely need to get something in process as to, if we report it the 3 times, then what will happen afterwards, or,
I guess the question is who enforces that? Is that the Dolton Police Department or the Thig Pen as far as to enforce it, or what's the process, and then who enforces it?
I would say with the police, it's going to be more like the crime element for nuisance, the dog situations, so forth like that. Like the police, it worked twofold. Like it may fall upon the housing or Brian, and it may fall upon the police department. Like if your neighbor dogs got out, then the police department or housing, we write a lot of tickets for dogs at large loose, and sometimes these people, they just pay it. And if they don't, it'll go through the system and so forth and so on. But the crime element, that's where we mostly get involved. The crime-free housing, and it's different from like you all's concerns are more like on the housing side, but when it gets to people shooting and selling drugs and so forth. Now with the drugs, we got a lot of drug houses in Dolton. It's a gateway. You have Bishop Ford, 57, Indiana, and it's a lot going on, and where you have to do a lot of work up to get these people. It should be like, hey, you catch them and you got them and they can get out, but it's a lot of work up, and it's not just the police officers. Police officers are doing their job. It's the judicial system. They want so much. They want you to get garbage pools. They want you to get this. It's so much that you have to do when it comes to people selling these drugs and them getting locked up, and actually with it sticking, not going in and getting an I-bond and getting right out. Because believe me, they got some money, and if they don't, they got somebody that got some money, they can get them right out. So it's almost like these the little cats out here. They're not really concerned about the little cats. They're just going to leave it for Dolton to handle that. Lock them up. They get right back out. They do the same thing. They're more wanting the big people, like the cartel and who's the heavy hitters. So it's a lot of times it's just like a revolving door. It's the same way with the juveniles. That's what we face. A lot of our crime is done by juveniles. And juveniles, they have a point system. We got juveniles that have been caught with weapons. And, they can't go to the juvie because they haven't reached enough point status, but they've already been arrested, caught 2 or 3 times with a weapon. You see, so it's
so many offenses before.
Yeah, juveniles, it goes on a point scale. You can get a point, half point, and it's sad, but
Just have a question regarding the crime-free housing. So as a resident, and if I see activity on my block that I know is drug activity, how do you suggest we report it to the police department? It's one of those drive-by type of transactions. You park, someone pulls up, you do your transaction, they both pull off. And this happens on a regular basis. So what can the police department do for that? Because you have to be there in the moment to see
right.
it.
And that's another concern. It's a cat and mouse game.
Yeah.
We come, they stop. We leave, they start back. One of the things, we formulated a tactical unit. So when those concerns come in, those addresses, as you all call in or email or put it on the hotline, and then we can pass it on to them. So now they can sit in a covert car and try to build some stuff up and work it up so that we can start shutting some of this stuff down. So we have our own tactical unit that just started this week, and as well as we're doing a mutual aid agreement with South Holland, Riverdale, and Thornton. So our tactical officers will always be out here outside of their off days, and at any given time, you may see 6 additional officers out here.
What's the hotline number?
I'll give it to you. I got to look in my email. I'll give it to you.
Okay.
When we get
So
done.
this is a line that we can call anonymously, or?
Yeah, you can do that, and as well as the Dolton Police app.
Would you tell them about me and apps?
You don't do the apps?
I don't do it.
Okay, yeah, well, hey, 911 is always our best number. Then you got my number, email, and then I can forward it on, but I'll get that other number for you as well.
So I know that you used to do the meetings on Saturdays?
Yes.
That I can't make it to, but are you still doing those?
Yes, the first one will be this Saturday for this year.
Okay.
On the 29th at 10 a.m. Yeah, we switched it because the last Thursday.
I know why it was switched, but I work on Saturdays.
Right,
so
yeah. So, we
can't please everybody, but
right.
I'll watch them. Anybody else?
Okay, so another issue that we have in Dolton is squatters. And
can I stop you right there?
Sure.
The mayor has had, this past Saturday, coffee with the mayor. This is her 3rd time out, one of the judges, to talk about squatters. Police Weekend, they do nothing about that. They have rights, and it's a good presentation, awesome. And the mayor, he calls out like probably every 2 months. I know she's been there 3 times, and if you look back at the meeting, she's on there and talking about it. Squatters, and we get a lot of homeowners that the sheriff will come and apply the sign and remove the body. They don't remove the furniture. It's up to the owner to have the movers there at the time the sheriff comes. So what's happening is that the people are removed, but the owner didn't have movers to move the stuff out. They'll make arrangements for them to go back in. Sometimes they go back in and I'm back in. Or sometimes they'll break in. So it's like a sticky situation because the homeowner knows when the sheriffs are coming out. So they should make arrangements for the movers to be there. So while the sheriffs are there and they're removing the bodies, they could just start moving the stuff out, whether they're prepared or not prepared. But they can set everything out on the street. Then the homeowner needs to change the locks at that time. And now if they go back in, that's trespassing. But if they can go back in with a key, and all this stuff is in there, when the police come, they'll be like, oh, I live here, so it's like a process. But yeah, we always, the local police always get kind of thrown in the mix, But that's it. They have a lot of rights. But I still listen to your question. But yeah, it's phenomenal, and it's like I can't even believe like. How do they get rights like that? I went looking for a home some years ago in Country Club Hills, one of those big ones, and the realtor went there. The realtor went there, and the code didn't work, and somebody came to the door. Yes, may I help you? And the realtor said, "Oh, excuse me." Got on the phone and talked about the address and said, "Yeah, it's supposed to be empty." They set up shop, furniture in there, everything. They got the utilities on. And that's very ballsy to me. I can't live like that. To actually set up shop like that, knowing that you're not, but they know it's a process. So yeah.
Nah, it's a process to get them out, but
Yes, it's a process.
That wasn't about what I was saying. Eviction, yeah, you got to evict them out. Yeah, but that wasn't what I was talking about. I mean, I was using squatters as the name,
Okay.
but it was in reference to criminal activity. So on Evans Street, because I stay on Evans Court, on Evans Street, where and I just say known squatters or whatever the case may be, but it's criminal activity, and I'm saying criminal activity, and I'm not saying, oh, I'm assuming somebody selling drugs or anything like this. This is criminal activity, like I see somebody breaking in, or I see somebody stealing, or whatever the case may be. And I understand that because it is somebody else's property, we call the police to do our due diligence, because that's what we are, to keep our neighborhood kind of safe. But at the same time, when it starts getting to a point where the police just knows that this is what's going on and kind of drives by, who do we go kind of above the officer to get some of these things, like, I don't want to say settled, because that's not really the word, but it's just like now, if you go down 148th and Evans, it's just like dilapidated. It's a lot of abandoned houses. You see these kids, and that's what they are, normally juveniles, in the middle of the day, like I've been working on a different schedule. So you see them taking stuff out of houses or going in houses that you know that's an empty house, and you call the police and they come like 20, 30 minutes later, and you don't always want to be the person to be like, oh, they was doing it, or you the tattletale, but it's affecting your community and the property. Like, at what point, who do we go to?
Well, if the officer 20, 30 minutes later, it got to be something major going on for them to come that late. I'm out here all different times, and most of the time they get to it in a fairly amount of time, 2 to 5 minutes, depending on the nature. But if you witness somebody breaking in something and the officer comes by and roll by and don't get out and look or do a walk around, call back to the dispatch and say, hey, the officer just came, they didn't get out, the person is in there. Or, ask to speak to a supervisor. Each shift has a watch commander. And let them know, like, hey, I saw the officers coming, but they just drove by. They didn't even get out and check. At least check and see what's going on. Even if the offenders have went in and left, still do a walkthrough.
Because now it's at the point where I feel like even though they kids, it's safety issues in there. Like, you don't know what they doing inside, setting stuff on fire, but they are kids. They're juveniles that's in these abandoned houses. And nobody's kind of doing nothing about it.
One of the other problems we face too is the same kids that you may see. I call them Thig Pen. I need this address boarded up. Once it gets boarded up and we done generated a bill in which we have to pay for this board up, next thing you know, those same kids have busted the boards and then discarded them somewhere else, and we have to constantly keep doing this all over again. And even if we reach out to whoever may own it, 9 times, well, I won't even say 9 times out of 10, a large percentage of the time, it's banks that own it. So then I have to track down who is the reference or the go-to from that particular bank over this particular property. And sometimes, let's take, for example, Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo is dispatched in so many different states, and so what they do is when a property goes back to the bank, I have to try to figure out which Wells Fargo or which representative of that Wells Fargo that I can contact to let them know that this property is a problem property. And so it's like the research and the time that it takes a lot of time, but it's like we're constantly trying to keep it safe by keeping it boarded up. But until somebody comes and give us the go-ahead or they make the decision to demolish it, we're going to constantly keep running back and forth.
Yeah, if they're caught, then yeah, they get taken in. They get taken in, and depending on what they were caught doing, their parents are called and released back to them, and they may get issued a fine if they're caught in the act.
So if the parent is contacted, are there any repercussions on the parents? Or even if those children are parents or voucher holders, that's another incident for that voucher to be pulled. So I guess my question would be, if a child is caught doing the crime and you report it to the parent, what liability holds on that parent for that child not to do it again? Because if there's no repercussions, I'm going to keep doing it.
No, I say they'll get issued a fine depending on what they're doing, and if it's an ordinance where they can issue a citation for.
But they pay the fine and then the kids still keep doing it. So do you identify if that parents, and I'm just asking this because that's another way for us to think about how do we rid this activity? Is it, and I don't want to pigeonhole any population of people to say that, are these parents voucher holders? And if so, who's the irresponsible person in this? And what recourse do we have as a village to make sure we rid ourselves of that? Some things I know we have no control over, but are we looking at things we do have control over?
Well, I would say sometime with these juveniles, most of the time when they're in this mischief like this, there is no parenting. And then when you come across the parent, they you see why the juvenile is acting like that. So, once again, we can issue the fine, and they can choose to pay it or choose not to pay it, and then from there it goes to whatever will get filtered through, however, through a collection agency or and get taken on the income tax return or however. But once again, it's the police. We could do our job. Our job is to respond to the calls, and then once you get them, you lock them up, you fine them, and then it goes to another level. Where to actually make a difference as to what the eye opener, and it's like all the parties are not working together. I mean,
I get that, and I'm thinking outside the box here to say, if I have a child that commits a crime, I do nothing about it. I bet I would do something about it if I had something that's going to happen to me. So I'm wondering if there's some way you can think about putting an ordinance in place if you get 3 offenses and that parent spends 24 hours in jail, or making it something that's really going to impact their life instead of a $100 fine that they will or will not pay. I don't know if we can do that legally, but I think I've heard of something to that effect being done. There has to be a larger consequence for those parents who say, oh, forget about it. That's just a thought. I don't know if that could materialize in the crime-free housing.
Instead of fining, because if they don't have the money, could they not have them do community service? Yeah. Oh, I won't need it now. Community service, yes.
Show up and they go. I mean, there has to be a consequence. So that's just something to think about. I don't.
Yeah.
Because this is a cancer bill. We're not doing anything else about it.
I know I said I wanted to ask Attorney Murphy, but I know in the city, if you have an offense, say drug-related, if you have 3 offenses in the city and they are drug-related, the city could possibly take ownership of your property. And it's in the city like that. If you keep on having like a drug bust and a drug bust, the owner normally goes to court. The court then tells the owner, either these people have to be evicted, or the next time that there's an offense here, that the city will possibly be the owner of your property. They take possession of your property. So, there's some things we have to be discussed, like you just said, with the offense. Can they do community service or something like that? So definitely we'll, run that across Attorney Murphy and see if these things, because it has to be something done other than just a slap on the wrist. We were talking, was it this week or last week? last week? We were out last week, and a resident had a complaint about 2 doors down, a neighbor on both sides. The garages are open. There are needles exposed in the garage, all those things, and children are coming through that alley. They pass through there. So we went out and took a look at it. Sure enough, it's there in Dolton. So Brian had that garage boarded up. The fine is going to be paid, goes down to the owner. But again, this owner has multiple properties, and he has multiple problems with those properties. So what else could we do besides give a fine? There should be something else we can put in place for that owner. There's just a slap on the wrist. You paying the fines.
I think it's worth exploring to see what options we have, and I think that, as a committee, if more residents want to put their input on solutions and just explore what could happen, because, again, it's our town. If we don't get involved in it, we're going to lose it. So I know that, you guys are a skeleton crew. You can't do everything, but if we come and work together collectively to say, what can we do, and see if there's any funding out there to support what you're doing, and sometimes there is, and just take that approach, because it's a problem. I think the cat and mouse problem for me, because I have a relatively quiet block, and I think that's why that block is selected, because we don't have a lot of activity. People don't hang out.
Right.
And they come, they park, and primarily in front of my house, and then you see the car going north, that car is parked going south, the exchange happens. And it happens between the hours of 4 p.m. and maybe 7 p.m. and probably later. I just don't look outside after that time. It's me. But that happens, and it happens daily, too.
You mentioned about having the homeowners, there was different things, like you found needles or whatever in these garages or whatever. Also, to expand on that, I don't know if there's an ordinance or anything that's in place, but if you have a garage where it's been sitting there empty or whatever, why is there an ordinance where you could have the person either rehab it to use it or tear it down if it's been sitting there empty for I don't know how long? And the same thing applies to these houses around here. We're talking about squatters, we're talking about children going into the houses. These houses have been sitting empty for years, and we boarding them up. They come in and take the boards off, go in them and all this. Why is it that the homeowners, either if there isn't an ordinance in place, have them either rehab the house or tear it down? Either or. Because it's not doing they're not doing anything to get it marketable where someone can buy it and live in it or whatever, but yet and still there's either, like we said before, criminal activity, children going in, or whatever, the building sitting there, or whatever's going on. So an ordinance in place to either have, when we're talking about consequences, tear the building down.
We would have to talk with Attorney Murphy about that, because we do have several ordinances that involve, disrepair of property and blighting of property. But to take it a step further, we would have to talk to legal about that. That particular incident that we had last week on Michigan involved a house being in decent condition, but the garage was the issue. So.
Okay, we're saying we have to see if this is legal and all of that.
No, legal consult for taking it a step further.
Right.
Currently, right now, if you give us a complaint, we go out, we assess the property. If it's a habitual property, we can go from, we don't have to give a 48-hour notice. We can go directly to issuing citations against the property owner. That's pretty much where we stop at. So what the trustee was actually saying was talking to legal to see if we can impose, I guess it would be anything from a higher fine, or should we force them into demolishing that particular piece of the property, whether it's a tool shed or an actual garage. Even with the vacant properties, as Sharon had mentioned about the housing department, once, sometimes you have to research, and it could take weeks to track down a potential bank owner of a property and see what they do. We just can't go out there and technically knock down somebody's house, and then we'll be liable if they come back and say, 2 weeks later, say, hey, I had a house sitting here, what happened to it?
No, what I'm saying is that if I understand there has to be a law or something in place in order to do that. So if we're talking about a fine, sometimes a fine doesn't matter to a person. It could be $1,000 or whatever, and I paid $1,000, and go back and do the same thing.
Exactly.
The next thing, what we're talking about, I'm thinking here is what's the next step? What is another consequence? And my thing is looking at this, and if as a homeowner, we have to keep our properties and whatever in repair, gutters and all of this. Now you have an empty garage that's been sitting there for who knows how long, no windows, no doors and whatever. You have a house sitting there with no windows, no doors, boarded up or whatever, and you have an ordinance in place that says a homeowner has to do gutters or something that I say trivial in comparison to a building that's sitting there abandoned or whatever. So I'm saying an ordinance in place or whatever, if it's not one in place, that would be a consequence if a person has to tear the building down or whatever. After being fined one time or 2 times or whatever, next step is tearing it down or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, we can take that into consideration.
I have a question that's kind of going away from the crime-free, but to ask about the abandoned houses. Has there been a thought of a consideration of bringing the land bank back in to look at the inventory of abandoned houses that may have tax issues because I know that they have funding that will do some demos on properties, and it is no cost to the village. So is that something to consider? Should we bring them back at least to deal with some of those tax?
I've spoken with him months ago. Russ
Ryden?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And he has not gotten back to me. But I did reach out to him. This has been months ago.
So perhaps I can help with that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I'll do that.
And another thing, when she says about the abandoned homes, a lot of times the bank owns them. So once you trickle down trying to find out, who owns it, it's actually the bank. And it's a lot in detail to try to get the bank to actually do something with that property.
Don't we have, what is that service that was implemented with Mr. Urban? ProChamps. So ProChamps does what?
So ProChamps identifies the vacant property, notifies their, what we call ambulance. My voice carries. They do what we call, what we quote unquote, do the ambulance chasing. So what they do is they do their research on their end and send the necessary billing to whoever owns that vacant property and register that vacant property, and then they send the village, and notify us that this particular property is vacant, this particular property is vacant. That's pretty much, it's like their third-party vendor type thing.
So of the ones that they identified, I'm certain that there's another list of ones that haven't been identified, or owners or banks and things of such. Do we have any type of tracking mechanism of which houses are abandoned in our town, collectively what ProChamps has identified to the ones that haven't been identified? Do we know our inventory in short?
No, I don't. No. I really don't.
So maybe that's something that we should probably start looking at and really think of ways to combat that, because there's some opportunities that we as a village can take advantage of to help us do that.
Okay, one other last question. What is the process? I see on here it say failure to obtain proper permits. What is the process if you receive a citation for not having a permit? Then you come and get the permit. Do you go to court? How long do they normally, how long is it before you're issued the court date or a ticket or anything to that effect?
If a stop work order was placed, it's a ticket written that day, and you will receive a court date for the stop work.
And who do the stop work order go to?
Generally, if a contractor is on the scene, we would do it to the contractor.
So who gets the ticket, the contractor or the homeowner?
The contractor, if the contractor is on scene.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Let me pull out my ticket. So, December 16th, I was not there. I was out of town, but someone was working at my property, and they told them that they needed a
Permit.
permit.
Okay.
So I came in that day because the people called me, and I asked the gentleman, Wes, I said, well, they were stopped. I didn't know. They only, stopped to take down some drywall or whatever. And he said, if it's over $300, then you got to have a permit. Okay, fine. I'll pay the permit. I said, am I receiving the ticket? He said, no, I issued the ticket to the gentleman or whatever.
Okay.
That's what he said. So February 7th, last week, I got 4 tickets with my name on it, with their their license plates on it. Then it says failure to obtain a general permit, failure to get a plumbing permit, failure to get an electrical permit, failure to get a small dumpster. For one, you told me that I wasn't getting a ticket because you told me that you issued a ticket to these people. Then I got it, but then all of these tickets don't even apply to what was done in my home. So who do I talk to about this?
The hearing officer.
And who would that be?
That will be at your court date. Do you have a court date?
Yeah, so this was issued December 16th. It looked like they attempted to have it on January 16th, but since I never received it to February 7th, they had changed the date to February 20th for the court date, which is coming up next week.
Next Thursday.
Mm-hmm. But I'm just kind of confused at how all these tickets came in my name and they don't even apply to what was going on in my home.
Come to court, and I'm pretty sure we'll get it straightened out there.
Oh, okay. Thank you so very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Right. I think it was done intentionally, but who says anything?
I have another question. I shouldn't give me the mic. But this has just directed to you. I know some time ago the committee talked about the welcome package for our new residents and it was complete. How do we find it?
This will be a question directed to Mary Kay because she's the one that was supposed to have been revising the packet. Okay.
Can we have has everybody reviewed it and did it just by her or has anyone else reviewed it? Okay. Or either just at the board meeting announce it. I'm just curious as to what's in it and, making sure we include everything. Okay. Anybody else got going I'm just curious. We don't get to talk about housing often, so this is great that we're having it even on this beautiful snowy night that we're able to talk about it. Are we going to have regular meetings? That's a good question.
Absolutely.
Every month?
Every month.
Okay.
But we can't, so I'll put it like that.
What would prevent us from having it?
Last year, so I definitely.
We had one. We have.
I do have something else that I want to do. I talked to, someone I want to have come in, and we want to speak about property taxes, the different forms you can fill out, like if a person is disabled, they also get an exemption. So I talked to her at Coffee with the Mayor, and I'm going to set a date for her in March.
Treasurer? Cook County Treasurer?
Thornton Township.
Oh, Cassandra.
Right, yes.
Okay.
So she wants to set up a date to come out and talk about some different things.
Interesting.
So I'm
Okay.
definitely going to set up a date with her, but as much as we can, I would like to have them monthly, and that's the plan,
Okay.
to have them monthly, absolutely.
All right.
All righty.
Last question. The ordinance for the crime-free and chronic nuisance, where can we find that? Is that online or?
If it's not online, I can check. If not, I can get it, and then I can put it on. We can put it on the website.
That would be nice to have. Thank you.
I don't have nothing else.
All right, give a motion.
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Second.